leaders of the world. Welcome to Spread Love in Organization podcast, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I am excited today to have with me John Bamforth. John was born and raised in the UK before moving to the US in 2001. A pharmacist with a PhD in neuropharmacology, John joined the pharma industry in 1989 with Eli Lilly, spending most of his career in commercial functions, recognized as a builder of global brands and leader of highly engaged and performant teams. After 30 years in pharma, John returned to academia to lead Eshelman Institute for Innovation at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. The Institute is focused on translating the brightest ideas on campus into products and services that impact patients. John is passionate about people and an advocate of diversity and inclusion. I can go on for hours presenting John, his involvement with startups, with biotechs, and his love for his family and sports. But let me stop here and hear all this from him. Welcome, John. I'm so excited to have you, and thanks for being with me today.
Thanks, Naji.
John, let's get started. So tell us a little bit what's in between the lines of your impressive and amazing careers and things that we don't see usually on LinkedIn. What's your personal story?
Well, I mean, I think it always goes back to a lot of this goes back to your upbringing, right? I think, and I come, as you quite rightly point out, from the northwest of England, close by Manchester. And it's a very working class part of the country. It's very, very different to London, very different. It's a strong community. It's it's a pretty working class. I think where I came from, it was a coal mining region of the country. But in addition to that, neither of my parents made it even to high school. They were both working at 14, 15 years of age. And so that, I think, gave me a kind of grounding, for working folks, so to speak. When your mom was, my mom was a school administrator, so she was a secretary at a school. And, when you hear stories of, we'll talk about engagement, I'm sure, as we go through our discussion. But, you hear the good and the bad stories from your parents as kind of folks on the front line, so to speak. So my parents, didn't have the education, but they gave me an amazing kind of family background, a stability that frankly is still there today. I'm blessed that they're both still alive. And so I've known them for 57 years, and not many people have that opportunity to know their parents for that long. But they just gave me that support system to go out and do things a little bit differently, to try some things. I had a passion for science, but my dad was always a sales guy. He had his own business till 78 years of age. Wow. And so I had this science piece, but I used to go out with him when he was out on the road, selling. He used to sell things like Caterpillar tractors and things like this, heavy industry machines. Yeah. And watching him do deals and watching him sell was a young kid, because he was a guy that always took risks when he was doing a deal. And so watching him do that kind of gave me that feel that maybe, it's that business side of work was something I might get into down the line. So that's a little bit of kind of the history from a long time ago.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing. And so this is where you feel it combined between the science and sales. Is this what took you to the pharma industry and now through academia?
Yeah, I mean, I started as you said, and I started in pharmacy, did a PhD, and I think I realized pretty quick that I didn't think I had the intellect to be a world-class scientist. I think I knew after 3 years of doing a PhD, sat in my lab, that I could get my PhD. I could do that relatively easily, but going beyond that and being a world-class scientist, I just didn't think I had the intellect for it. And that's what drove me more onto in fact, people thought I was absolutely crazy when I decided to finish my PhD and go straight into sales. I mean, all my colleagues in academia, when they said that, when I said that's what I was going to be doing with my PhD, they thought I was absolutely out of my mind.
Yeah, but I'm sure, John, it's not the intellect. It's like there was something deep inside that you should move.
Well, I think it was I saw the fun that my dad had in that environment, that commercial environment, and it just, I think it was something that was a fairly natural path. And then obviously moving into the industry, it combined a little bit of the science piece. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it was a natural path to go that direction.
Awesome. So you started in sales in the pharma industry, and then obviously you led team throughout your career into huge performance success. When you reflect back on all those years where you led teams, brought brands globally successfully, what is kind of your top learnings around this, starting with your personal purpose and then moving forward through all those careers? What is your top learning for all of the leaders who are listening to us now?
Yeah, for me, it's it always starts with the culture that I'm trying to create. So we all know the data around 70%, as much as 70% of people going to work every day are not engaged. They're not enjoying what they're doing. They don't have a purpose, right? They often is the case. And so for me, it's always starts with creating that engaging culture. That culture that causes people to thrive. I always think about the phrase that always springs to mind for me is kind of remove the shackles and let people fly. Because in my experience, if you put the right sorts of people and in that type of engaging culture, amazing things happen. That potential that each individual has starts to come to life. And I'm always shocked, and I shouldn't be now because I've been doing this for over 30 years, but I'm always shocked at what people do. If you just, Daniel Pink talks about, 3 things in his book, Drive, talks about people having purpose, having autonomy, and having mastery. Those are the 3 things around drive that he talks about. And I think that piece, particularly around autonomy, I think we all understand the purpose piece and you can get the mastery piece and the piece around learning, but that autonomy, the willingness of a leader to let go and trust that everybody tends to want to do a really good job if you let them. And if you encourage them down that path, I think, amazing things happen. You and I both know some folks from our past that have done amazing things. And if you ask them at the early in their careers, they never thought they'd be able to do some of the things that they have done. And that was always unlocking that potential and showing them what they could do, right? And how the sorts of big jobs and big responsibilities they could do. And it's fun to, as a leader, when you do it, it's so much fun to watch, unlocking that.
Yeah, I love that. And how you can, you said like your role as a leader, part of it was really how to look at this and make sure that people can grow and believe in themselves, right? For them to fly. Like it's really an amazing way you're framing it. During those challenges, many times people would be afraid, in moments of uncertainty, well, either through what we lived recently with the pandemic, but also in normal business time, right? Like sometimes we have challenges, business results are not here, we're not getting where we had as a vision. So how would you lead your teams during those times, especially where potentially trust can be challenged and potentially you're like, no, I need to take back control, right? Like to make sure that things are moving in the right way. How did you balance this as you were leading teams?
I think well, first of all, in these sorts of times, I read a great little book recently by a guy called Ryan Holiday. And the book's called The Obstacle is the Way, or The Obstacles Are the Way. I can't quite remember the title, but it's essentially that concept. And he basically articulates, some of this philosophy that emerged kind of in Greek and Roman times around, there is a guarantee that obstacles will occur.
Yeah.
Like none of us are going to go through life without obstacles, some of which you can't do very much about. So, we think about clinical data around a new product. We can't control the data. The data will be what the data is.
Exactly.
But we can control what we do with that data and how we respond to obstacles. And they, in that philosophy, they embraced obstacles. They actually said, the approach to obstacles and saying, this obstacles are going to happen, and what are we going to do around those obstacles? And I think, we've got two 20-year-old kids, and our daughter in particular, at times, struggles with, she's still very early in her own development and struggles with these types of obstacles. And, we spend a lot of time coaching her on, okay, what's your action plan going to be against this obstacle? And I think that for me is, embracing things like that. I mean, look at how many people have been successful during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, they have jumped into things, and there are businesses that have transformed themselves during COVID. We can talk about things we've been doing at UNC, but we've doubled that. We have an amazing virology cohort of faculty at UNC, and we've basically doubled down on that faculty over the last 12 months to develop novel antivirals for the next pandemic. So I think there's just, I just think it's a mentality around how you approach anything that's put in front of you. Right?
Yeah. I've been reflecting a lot on this, and it's really around how do you react to those things, right? Like you can't control what's going to happen to you, but as you said, it's how you're going to react to them, and then what you're going to do once this happened. That is crucial and creates who you are.
Yep.
That's awesome. And John, you talked. I'd love to hear a little bit more. Through the pandemic, what's you said you've been working on things, and it's many topics gave us so much hope, right? When we see how people got together towards giving more hope, either antiviral vaccines, or all the other things that we've seen, testing. Anything that really impacted you through your work at UNC, or anything else during this pandemic that you felt really humanity is here, and we as leaders in healthcare stood up to the occasion, and we're literally changing and impacting the world.
Yeah, I mean, as you probably expect, Nadia, I've got a little bit of a bias towards the industry, having spent 30 years in the industry. And the thing that's encouraged me the most, I think, is how the industry has responded to this challenge. And actually, it's remarkable. There was a Harris poll the other day that asked the general public in the US about their perspective on the industry. And we know for many years it's not been a very positive story. But because of the pandemic and the way that the industry has responded, be it antibodies, be it remdesivir, be it the vaccines, it's transformed how the general public think of the industry. Now 2/3 of people see the industry in a positive light. And I think about not only the speed that a lot of these companies, and at the end of the day, these companies are people, right? I mean, you and I know from our time at Lilly, there's no such thing as Lilly. There's only people that work at Lilly. And, be it Lilly working on the antibodies they produced, or BioNTech, Pfizer folks developing the first vaccine, it's people have done remarkable things in these companies. And I've been interacting with many of them through my work at UNC. And it's this collegial nature of those collaborations have been remarkable. And for me, that's been incredibly encouraging.
Yeah, great. It's going back to the purpose, right? Like we're literally here waking up every day to make life better for people in this industry. So great to hear it from you also, John, going through it. You talked about how you're embracing, and helping people learn, develop, and you develop so many leaders across, along your career. What is, if we go back to spread love in organization, right? And this idea of genuine leadership, what did your experience, bring when you look back into it? you've done this, right? So what is the impact that you've seen, and what would you say to other managers these days, trying, and we heard a lot about it, about mental health in workplace, unfortunately diversity and inclusion, and all that we've lived with social unrest. So what are your thoughts about this from more a real experience where you saw impact, right, on both people and then ultimately on patients that you helped throughout your career?
Yeah, for me, particularly, I'm an old guy now, so I have lots of opportunity to reflect, right? So my reflection really on that career was the career in the industry, and to a degree it's continued at UNC. When I was worried about me and my career versus worrying about other people, I was a lot happier when I was seeing the team develop and the folks within the team develop and those folks be successful. I was walking down the beach yesterday, and there was a lady walking towards me, and she had across her t-shirt, she had "Kindness is free," right? And I think at this point, particularly in the middle of the pandemic, particularly in the US, where all of the, we're so polarized, I think it's a great reminder that, if you're spending your time worrying about other people and thinking about other people, generally speaking, you'll feel a lot better about yourself at the end of the day. Occasionally I'll write down, when I'm sad, I write down my to-do list for the day every day. And I'll usually, some days that I will write down, impact 10 people today. And I will literally keep tally for the day on whether I've done positive things for 10 people. And I don't always get that. But, if you've got this frame of, and it can be really little, I think back, when I was chief marketing officer in the US business at Lilly, one of the things that I realized, all of a sudden, I'm a vice president in the company and all this sort of stuff. I don't, as I don't care about titles, but I realized other people did, right? I mean, they saw this title, and for some reason they saw it as an impressive thing. So I flipped it on its head a little bit and said, no, I can use that, right? So, and what I mean by that is, so I do things like I would cheat. I would get all of the team's birthdays in my calendar. And so I'd get up in the morning first thing, and I'd see it was Fred's birthday today, and I would text the individual happy birthday. And because it was coming from the CMO, it was like, oh my goodness, the CMO sent me a happy birthday, right? I mean, so it's, all these little things really add up over time. People remember the little things that you did for them, and they all add up, right? And I just think it's a frame of, positivity that I just think works, and I think it really impacts culture.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And this, well, you generally care. You always obviously generally care. Like going into even knowing and putting it in your calendar, reaching out. This shows, a lot of care for your people that were in your circle and your teams. That's really amazing.
I actually think the last comment I'll make, Naji, I think you mentioned D&I. I didn't fully understand the challenges in the US until I came to live in the US, and some of the history. Now, I've done a lot of reading about the US history and where some of these challenges come from. And I think you come from an international background. You originate from Lebanon. You lived a long time in France. We all before I came to the US, I had a lot of experiences of different cultures, be it in Europe or other parts of the world. I remember, I lived for 3 years with a Gujarati guy when I was doing my PhD. So I spent time with his family. They built a restaurant business, and so I'd spend a lot of time. It was a good thing, going to Indian restaurants. But you learn about the beauty about those cultures, and so again, bringing that to life here in the US and helping folks understand the power of these cultures being brought together. You and I had the opportunity, obviously, in global teams. We could take the brightest and best people from around the world and put them into a single global team, and that was a a really cool thing to do, because we saw that the power of that team come to life, and the diversity of that team was at the heart of it, right? I mean, we always tried to get 50-50 male, female, and then we would pull the brightest and best from countries, all in the 140 countries we were operating in. And when you've seen the power of diversity deliver on performance, because those teams perform better, they are more innovative, all the data supports that. And so, this is not about, D&I through the lens of representation. This is D&I through the lens of performance. And for me, I think, again, another important part of engagement and creating culture.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing this. And it's a whole, I'm sure we will get into another, podcast and discuss D&I into more depth. It's, I know how passionate you are about it, all the work that you've done, and there's a long way. As you said, I think a lot has been done, but even some small social things, we're in the Women's Month, right? Like, and when you reflect all the social things and unconscious biases that we educate our people on, even without even thinking about it, it's just, there's so much yet to do, right? On diversity.
Yes,
and inclusion.
a lot, a lot.
Yeah.
We, one of the appeals are going to work at UNC. Obviously, UNC is in the south of the US. Lots of history on campus, off campus, in North Carolina and beyond. I mean, we have an apartment on a street where if you walk down the street, there is an old pharmacy that was one of the pharmacies where students had a sit-in in the 60s, right? And there's a whole monument outside reminding people what happened during those sit-ins in the 60s. So it's one of the appeals of going to UNC was to be in the middle of what we know is happening within the US and be part of the change that needs to happen, even just on campus.
So now I want us to play a game. I'm gonna say one word, and I want you to say what comes top of mind.
Okay.
Cool. So let's start with innovation.
For me, it's got to be opportunity. I mean, I'm right in the middle of the oldest public university in the US, UNC, and we get $1.2 billion of investment from the government, from NIH every year in science and beyond. And for me, innovation is, me with the team that we've got right now is converting a lot of that science into things that we get out of the door of UNC, be it into startups or into things that are licensed by other companies. So innovation is opportunity.
Innovation is opportunity. Love that. Team.
Oh, that's an easy one. My reaction to team is actually love. So I love being, going all the way back to college days. I played college rugby, so I was in the middle of team sports and headed up all at the college where I did my PhD. Headed up all of the sports teams in my second year that I was there. And I've just always loved being right in the middle of a whole bunch of people and the energy that comes from that and what teams can achieve.
Yeah, great. What about global brand?
Oh, global brand. I'm having flashbacks. So, you and I worked on a brand called Cialis, right? And I'm remembering all the challenges from the affiliates that we worked with around why we shouldn't be using a global brand around the world because it didn't work in their particular country. So I would say global brands, again, great fun to be part of one, but the day-to-day work sometimes is a little bit of a challenge, right?
Great. What about, well, we talked about diversity and inclusion. If I say equity.
Equity for me right now, that cuts right to the heart of what I don't understand in the US right now, because I look at, again, the breadth of opinion on some of the race challenges going on in this country, particularly in the African American community. I think about George Floyd and all the things that happen around George Floyd. I mean, I find it hard to compute, given all the friends that I have in the African American community, and I have a lot. I don't understand why people don't see equity and inclusion as opportunity for us as humanity. I'm in the middle of another book about Martin Luther King, and reading about his involvement in the 1960 election with Kennedy and Nixon, and being thrown in jail because he had a driving license that was from a different state. He had a driving license, it was in date, but it just wasn't from Georgia. And I look at things like that, the depth of the challenges that we have in the US as a US citizen now. I might not have a US accent, but I'm a US citizen. And I don't understand the barriers that some folks have to equity. I don't, and this is not people from those communities wanting special treatment, right? They just want to be treated like the rest of us. That's all they're asking for. They want a fair shake. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for a fair shake. I mean, I've got so many friends that in these minority communities, I don't understand what the objection would be. Yeah. I just don't get it, truthfully.
Yeah. Yeah, well, tough to ask for the last words after such a topic and what you said. Well, the word would be, it's 3 words. So it's spread love in organizations. Mm-hmm. What's come to your mind?
So I'm going to come up with this very strange phrase, and you're going to say, what are you talking about, John? So the word that springs to mind from some very recent conversations is pirate. And I'll explain why. And I think we did it back at Lilly, Naji. I think we always tried to do things a little differently. I don't think we necessarily needed to feel like we were within the norm of how the organization operated. And I think I've moved that similar culture to UNC with the team that we have at the Institute. And somebody shared a story from Steve Jobs from 1983, when he had an offsite, and it was the time that they were designing the Mac. And he said that he would much rather be a pirate than part of the Navy. And what he meant by it is, and the second phrase that he talked about, he said, was because pirates are audacious and courageous. And he wanted the team at Apple at the time to push the edge of innovation and really challenge themselves to do things differently to everybody else. And I think that's true for the culture that I personally believe in. And a lot of the places I've worked and the way we've done things on the teams that I've been responsible weren't the norm. They weren't when you said, you care more about other people than your own career, or, let people go, let them trust that they're going to do good work. Don't feel like, going back to this idea of autonomy, don't feel like you have to, review every slide they're producing. Will it be perfect? No, but it'll be their own work and they'll be pretty proud of it. I think that fits into this courage piece around culture, which is if you believe that's the culture you need to be successful, maybe it doesn't quite meet the corporate culture that's preached or delivered. That's okay. Do what you think is right by people. And I think that phrase of kindness being free is a good reminder as well when it comes to that too.
Right. Thank you, John. So now moving forward, with UNC, how are you continuing to spread love, kindness, as you said, in your organization? I don't know, in academia, how it is. Is it the same? Do you feel any challenges with this, or are you just doing it every day moving forward?
I think it's a bit different. I think there's some commonalities. So I think the idea of of having an engaging culture, I don't think changes. So, you know, I picked up a team, great group of people who were a little bit to the side of the rest of the organization at the school. And I could tell when I did the interview that they desperately needed somebody to come in and kind of change the way that they operated. So those frames are not different, I don't think. The bit that's different, I think maybe academia sees it even less than the industry that we were in. The reward in academia, as you know, is getting grants and publications and the like. It's not, the outcomes are not the same, and that there isn't much reward for the culture you create. And so I think it's again, what I'm trying to do with the team is use the team to show folks the impact of the culture we've been talking about for the last little while. And I see very positive signs that it works in all, it works at academia, it works in, the concept's the same.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that I think the ask is a bit bigger in academia.
Yeah.
But
great. So, before we go to a final word, you brought great books. Like you talked about a couple of books: The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, The Obstacle is the Way. Mm-hmm. What are you reading now? Like, what is one book that either you're reading now or you would definitely recommend for leaders, growing leaders?
Yeah. So my favorite book recently is a book called Range. And it's written by, the guy's last name is Epstein, I'm forgetting his first name, but it's essentially a discussion of specialization versus the sorts of careers where you've had lots of different paths that come together. The first story is comparing Tiger Woods to Roger Federer and the way that they developed. Tiger was 100% specialization from an early age. And then Roger Federer tried like 25 sports before he decided to do tennis, right? Focus in on tennis. And it's a discussion of the pros and cons of specialization versus diverse experiences. And I think for parents in particular, it's a really interesting read because, we all become laser focused. We hear about tiger parents, right? Who become so laser focused on their kid being the next LeBron James in basketball or whatever. And, this book talks to why that might not be, in many situations, that might not be the best idea. And, my favorite story in the middle of it, and without ruining the entire book, I'll only tell one story. In one of the chapters, it opens up and tells the story of this individual's career and career path. And this individual tries probably 15, 20 different things and either fails at each or doesn't become very successful in that particular domain and shifts to the next thing. And he does this for about 30 years. And then finally, he finds his thing as a painter and transforms the art world for the next 7 years until he dies early. And it's Vincent van Gogh. And Vincent van Gogh had this crazy experience of living through this journey to become the artist that transformed art forever. And I think it's just a crazy great read. And so I would recommend it to anyone.
I'm getting it. Thanks again, John. The last question is, any final word of wisdom that you have for everyone listening to you today?
No, first of all, I think the initiative around the idea of spreading love is great. I think it fits very firmly into my views of how to light up cultures in organizations. And, I think my final frame would be, it'll feel uncomfortable. For those of you who haven't done it yet, it'll feel uncomfortable stepping out there and not worrying too much about yourself, but spending your time really building these highly engaging cultures. But the benefits way outweigh the risk of jumping in and doing it. And I highly recommend it.
Thank you so much, John, again, for being with me today and inspiring us all to continue our journey, leading with genuine care and love for a better health in our teams, in our communities, and better healthcare around the world. So follow our podcast for more inspiring stories from global leaders. Spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our word so desperately.